Check, 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 and record here. Okay, man, we're off. Welcome to the Half Dozen Hospitality Podcast, Rhys Amber.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
My absolute pleasure. So, um, this has been interesting for me. Interesting in the sense that the theme of these podcasts that I've been doing as of late have really been super focused on what everyone in the world is really talking about right now, which is this pandemic that everyone's going through. But if there's one thing that I've taken from conversations that I've had formally here on the podcast or like informally in the background offline is there's this massive sense of community. And I'm super proud to be someone that is involved in hospitality. And I'd love to learn more of your story as well. But one thing I'm taking from all of this is this sense of community. And for so long, I've been talking about these silos that seem to exist in our industry. And I feel like they're slowly starting to crumble. So I'd love to get your take on that amongst a multitude of other things. But before I get too far into it, you and I really only know each other through interactions online.
Yeah.
So this is our first real conversation. So from a sincere standpoint, tell me more about like who you are, why you do what you do, how long you've been in hospitality, why you've chosen hospitality or hospitality chose you, and then we can get into more of like what the hell are we going to do?
Yeah, for sure, man. So I'm 28. I'm originally from Seashell on the Sunshine Coast, BC. I grew up there and I went to high school there. I kind of bounced back and forth throughout my childhood and my teen years between the Lower Mainland and the coast. I started in the industry in 2005, just, doing prep and stuff like that at the place down the road. And I just kept getting restaurant jobs all throughout high school and stuff like that. And it probably wasn't until I was like 20 that I, decided that, hey, maybe I want to start, investing some time and effort and not just being a line cook in a pub, but, becoming a chef. And that's what I did. So I've worked, in a multitude of places from camps to diners to pubs, restaurants, casual fine. It's kind of about as far as I've ever taken it. And then I ended up running a couple of different spots in East Van as CDC over the last couple of years. I was at Wagon Rouge on Powell Street, and then I was up at Camp Roma for the last year before it closed. And since then, I've partnered up with Colin Stouse, David Boquette of Powell Brewery, and Doug Steven from DL. And we've taken this big day barbecue concept that Colin and I originally started doing pop-ups for when we were at Campagnolo. And we've kind of morphed that into, like kind of a vagabond pop-up business. So, and that's where we're at now.
That's awesome. I see for those of you that are on iTunes, you can head over to YouTube to check out Rhys is wearing his Big Day Barbecue swag right now. Where can the listeners pick that beauty up?
Yeah.
Is that available online?
No, I wish. No, you got to come down to a pop-up to grab them.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, man. Or you can always DM us and we can sort something out.
There you go. I like it. So before we get into again like the current reality and landscape and stuff, how did the Big Day Barbecue even materialize? Like how did it become a thing? Was it literally just on the line one night having a conversation and thought, why not give it a shot? Or how did it become such a popular event for this city to populate?
So it was like May 2 years ago, and it was just leading up into VCBW, and the people at camp asked me to do a whole hog barbecue with them for VCBW, and Powell was going to sponsor it, and we ended up doing the pig roast. Are you getting me all right?
Yeah, I got you.
We ended up doing the pig roast. And Colin Stouse was the CDC at the Main Street location at the time, and him and I were just kind of starting to get to know each other. And he came over and helped out, and he threw a couple of briskets on the side of the pit, and it was a shit show, and protesters showed up, and I set the pig on fire, and I was awake for like 36 hours, and it was just a complete nightmare. And it started raining, so we had to move everything inside, and we got crushed. we got absolutely crushed. And I remember, I'm at the pass trying to sort out this mess of tickets because we hadn't created a system at all, and we're just totally getting slammed. And my friends are jumping back to help me out, and I'm delirious. And yeah, it was a nightmare. And after that, we said, "Fuck, we should do one of these every month."
and
Uh,
I'm
so,
I'm assuming now you have systems in place though.
oh yeah, no, now we can crush it out. Now we can crush out 300 people in like a couple hours, no problem.
Right.
Um, so and again, this is just as kind of a friendship between Colin Stouse and I was starting to develop. So we were spending a lot of time together. Saturday nights after service, we'd hang out in the back lot at Roma, and we drink beers, and we were trying to come up with some ideas to brainstorm. We're like, this is really great. We're at a point in our career now where I think that we can start trying to make a name for ourselves, and using the platform that we have to kind of make our own money. So we did three more of these, and we just kind of came up through chatting with the name and everything like that. And one of the servers at Roma is a graphic designer, Kristen Gardner. She's great. So she ended up starting to do these like iconic posters for us. And of the second poster, we took the logo, and it just kind of snowballed on us. You know what I mean?
That's
And then
awesome, man.
Roma ended up closing, and I left, and I was just kind of like on the eye for a while, and then I started doing some freelance stuff and just picking up gigs here and there. And then Colin ended up leaving, I think in February of the next year. And we knew we were going to do some pop-ups, and we knew we were going to do something, but we were never planning for it to be as crazy as it was. And it was right around New Year's. I was like, hey, let's go down to Texas and just eat some barbecue. And Dave had always been around, because he sponsored the events for beer. So we become good friends with Dave, and then Doug was like, "Hey, can we come? Can I come?" And we said, "Yeah, sure." So we ended up going down there, and then again, the snowball just kept growing, right? And we got back, we're like, "Fuck, let's do this. Let's build a 500-gallon offset smoker. Let's start a business." And then, before we knew it, we were landing residencies at DL, at the American. The pop-ups were getting insane. Alex Gill's writing about us. We're going on the news and all this stuff. And yeah, it's just kind of like a happy accident.
That's awesome, man. That's
Yeah,
super
man.
super cool, and it's so cool that it these things kind of materialize from such like casual conversations, whether they end up being these, like you said, like these iconic things that my understanding had like a bit of a cult following in this
Totally.
city. So hats off to you guys for recognizing and having the cojones to do it as well. I think it takes a little bit of like bravado and ignorance to do these things when it comes to anything in the hospitality industry,
Totally.
whether it's
Totally.
a pop up or investing in a smoker or whatever it is. Like you got to be
Yeah,
a little bit crazy, and
absolutely.
that's something that I think we can segue into is for so long that has been the story of those that look outside of the industry in is you'd have to be crazy to do it. And even people that
Absolutely.
are in it, they're like, man, don't ever do it.
Yeah.
I know personally when I was looking to open up my first spot, which never actually materialized, when I was looking for mentors and having chats with people, I'd say like, what's your number one piece of advice? And they would all say, don't do it.
Yeah.
But these are men and women that are in it and arguably successful, but they're saying don't do it. So um, big question, and we can bounce this one between you and I, but how do we how do we navigate this landscape? Let's just take COVID off the table right now. Let's just say the system is broken. Like
It
you
is.
guys and your first event, like those tickets coming in, there was no system, it didn't work.
Yeah.
And for so long our industry has just been like turning and burning people left, right, and center, businesses and individuals. So, not that I expect you to have all the answers off the cuff here right now, but do you have any ideas of things that were like glaring challenges that need to be fixed, so that it doesn't seem like it's always such a crazy idea to work in a kitchen or a crazy idea to open a restaurant? Like, what are some of those low hanging fruits that we could do as an industry, locally and globally, to make this more legit?
Um, that's a great question. And I think that there's a lot of fundamental changes that need to happen. I think there's a lot, like, I think the system is broken. Like you said, it's totally broken. And I think there's a massive disparity between front of house and back of house. I think that profit margins are really, really low, razor thin. And I think that ridiculous real estate has a lot to do with it. I think that although there is a demand for the supply, I still kind of feel as though the market is bloated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like a lot of people are swinging for the stars when they should really be kind of making safer bets. So, I mean, if we could start creating a culture and maybe passing some legislation that would look after employees a little bit better, I think that we need to just do away with tipping, and we need to start having some equal or some equality in terms of the pay between the front and the back. And we need to really start cracking down on labor standards, because I don't understand why hospitality is like the only industry where you can work 18 hours a day and not get paid overtime, and you can't take sick days, and it's just like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And then people are confused why cooks burn out all the time. It's like, because you just put them against the wall and just beat them till they're dead. Like, what do you expect is going to happen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, for owners, it's like you're saying, like, you got to be crazy to get into this business, because it's not a good idea.
Yeah,
It's not a
it's not a good
sound investment.
business. Yeah,
It's not a
exactly.
sound investment. It's not. If you have a bunch of capital and you're looking to grow that capital, it's like the worst fucking idea ever to get into restaurants. I mean, some people smash home runs, but like, maybe real estate. I mean, maybe not right now, but maybe real
Right.
estate is a good idea. Maybe anything else, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I mean, maybe like if the government started looking into it, and maybe if people started, using their voice a little bit, because you see on the news all the time, people are talking about the economy and the workforce and stuff like that. And, 7% of the Canadian workforce is restaurant related. And there's another almost 300,000 people that are indirectly related to that. And, oh, we're laying off 10,000 people from Boeing, or we're worried about what's going on in Northern Alberta. And it's just like, fuck, man, these people are starving.
Mm-hmm.
People are making, after they do the math, they're making 10, 12 bucks an hour in Vancouver. They're working 16 hours a day, and they're working in a certified ticketed trade.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I mean, I don't have the answer of how we
Yeah.
can resolve this issue, but I mean, the sooner we start throwing it on the table,
Yeah.
it's
Eh,
crazy, man.
So is this something that you guys amongst your amongst your peers discuss? Obviously, you're discussing things like let's throw a badass barbecue business event. So that comes up in conversation. But does this come up in conversation, or is this like the elephant in the room where everyone's like, I don't really want to talk about it because one, I don't know the answer, and two, I may even be part of the problem. And the reason I ask that is because I feel like, and this is where we can bring the COVID thing back into this conversation. I feel like it's kind of a blessing in disguise, as terrible as it is to say, from a economic standpoint and from a health and wellness standpoint. Because I hate seeing people ill and people passing away. No one ever wants that. But is this correction that we need to completely overhaul how things are done? And one of the things that I really want to advocate, and I've been talking about forever on this podcast, is we need to start charging more for the food that we provide. And if everyone jumps on board, we're laughing. But there's so many people that are afraid to do it because they're afraid that everyone's going to go buy the $4 burger down the street as opposed to the $23 burger that people should be paying, because that's what it's going to cost to keep people employed, farmers busy, lights on, cool music, all those things. But there's this, it's like everyone's afraid to jump in that cold water of like, man, those spot prawns should be $65.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, as far as it being like an elephant in the room, I don't really think it is, at least amongst, my sphere, the people that I hang out with and talk to.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about it all the time, and we're talking about mental health all the time and stuff like that. And I totally agree with you about, prices do need to come up. And if we could collectively do that, I'm not sure whether this disaster is going to be the catalyst to start solving these problems, or at least, start opening our eyes to what's going on. But it's certainly accelerating problems that are already on the table. And it's certainly bringing a lot of issues to light in terms of how volatile things are. I really hope that, we can start, implementing things like removing tipping and increasing prices to try and, bring some normality into the industry. But
Yeah, I think this is. Sorry, go ahead.
so who knows, man?
Yeah, who does know? But that's what I said. Like we need a collective of some sort, whether it's uh, on a like a city level or on a provincial level or national level or a global level. It's like there needs to be change and there needs to be conversation, and that conversation for me needs to be like, hey, this is what it actually costs to have this carrot from Chilliwack on your plate. And there's
Yeah.
this discrepancy right now. People, and hey, hands up, I was on Amazon earlier trying to find like cheap Calvin Klein underwear. I get it. I want to bargain as well. But there's certain things that we have to understand, like beef tenderloin, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Lobster, it's expensive. Chanterelles are like these things. It's just education that I feel is our obligation as an industry to tell people that, hey guys, like if you want to have uh, heritage pig at your barbecue, it's going to cost you,
It's, it's not cheap, man.
right?
No, I mean, so one of the things that Colin and I did right when we met while we were starting Big Day is we traveled around the province and we sourced ingredients from everywhere we could go to do a dinner. It was called Off the Line. Chef's Table Society was involved, and yeah, during that process, I mean, it was mind blowing to see what's available. But I mean, if you're sourcing everything properly locally and stuff like that, I mean, it's expensive. It's
Yeah.
very, very expensive, and people really struggle with paying those prices. And so it's like, where do you draw the line? What do you do? You know,
What
I,
what could you do? Starting off, what could you do with Big Day, for example, to increase your ticket prices? This is just an idea. Like, what could you do to increase your ticket prices, but then change something about the experience that people will be like, oh man, this is totally worth it? Because maybe they don't understand the raw cost of like that brisket that they're eating. But is there anything else you could do to elevate that experience so that they're like, damn, this is worth the $200 a ticket?
that's a great question, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head, but I think that you're onto something there. And I think that especially in higher end restaurants, that's totally, it's experiential, right? And that's going to help
Yeah.
meet, with the pricing.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. I just feel like because there's so little wiggle room in food pricing. Like the cost of, let's just say again, like animal protein isn't going down, right? That's not
No,
going down. It's always
no,
going up. But people are only willing to pay so much for that steak, for example. There's a
yeah,
ceiling to that. So my hopes from this is, and I'm encouraging some of my clients here, is like, okay, guys, this is a chance for you to totally refresh how you run a service and what you offer. Like, what is free that we haven't been doing for a long time? And a lot of people, I hate to say it, have been like, it's like the inconvenience hospitality. It's like, oh, you're here for a coffee. It's like this hipster, not to shit on hipsters, but it's like this, it's like you're too cool to serve me my coffee. Whereas like say hello, welcome you to the space. Have you been here before? If you haven't tried this, like these are free things that we can be doing to really impact a user's experience and separate us from people that aren't doing that. And I think for too long, because of things like you've mentioned, long hours, shitty pay, all those things, people are like, why am I gonna be nice and like go above and beyond? But if you say like, hey man, we're going to give you benefits. We're going to pay you $5 more an hour. You get vacation pay, whatever it is. They're like, okay, cool. Like, dance monkey. I'm all over this.
yeah, for sure.
So
And I think
just
that, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
no,
you.
no. I was gonna say just an idea. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing that I'm really big on is educating the public about the situation, because being conscious about the decisions that we make, the way that we present ourselves, all like the food that we buy, all that stuff it's big, especially in this day and age. It's on the forefront of people's minds, and people are worried about where their coffee bean came from, but they don't give a shit about the guy making $9 an hour
Right.
making their coffee. And I'm like, okay, if we can take these good intentions and kind of divert them a little bit, not necessarily misdirect them, but just divert them a little bit and draw some attention to, hey, right here, right now,
Hmm.
that guy that just made your dinner, lives in a shitty apartment in Surrey and he commutes 2 hours a day and work 14 hours a day.
Hmm.
And he's depressed. He's got no savings. And as soon as one little hiccup comes along like this, he's fucked, man. Or
Yeah.
she.
Yeah. So what has this? Let's talk a little bit more just reality right now in context for the listeners. Like, what has this pandemic done to you from? I mean, you don't have to get specific, but from like a business and economic standpoint, what was the reality for you 3 weeks ago, and what is it now?
The reality for me 3 weeks ago was I was preparing for a massive season that we really needed with my business partners, and we were starting to plan and book events and get ready to make money that we seriously need right now. And I was also working on the side in film, doing catering. And in a matter of about a week, every single thing just shut right down. And I don't qualify for EI or anything like that. I mean, I know there's assistance coming, but it puts me in a pretty sticky situation. Luckily, with the business, we're not really tied into any massive leases or anything like that, so we're going to fare a lot better in this than most,
Hmm.
for sure. But it's definitely a massive stick in the spokes. I'm pretty fortunate in that I don't have a lot on the line to lose right now, although a lot of people do.
Hmm.
But the other issue with this situation is I have a compromised immune system, quite a compromised immune system. So, I mean, it's like even if I could find work right now, is that something that I should be doing? Right.
Right. So this is impacting you obviously economically, but there's a health concern as well.
I mean, I had tonsillitis in 2015 that went septic, and if I didn't go to the hospital, I would have died.
Oh, damn, dude.
Yeah, it was bad. I was in isolation for like 10 days. It was pretty rough. So I'm like, if this hits me, I'm afraid of what will happen.
So walk us through. I don't mean to laugh. I just think it's funny to get everyone's like quarantine stories. So, from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, what do you find yourself doing?
Uh, Jeez. I wake up, uh, mill around for a bit, make breakfast. I sit on my computer all day. I watch the news. I hit the refresh button on Reddit. I shoot the shit with my friends. I hang out with my girlfriend. We cook. We live together, so that really helps a lot. Watch TV. It's like I haven't been able to kind of commit to anything time occupying. I'm just like perpetually procrastinating.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah, I
mean?
hear you. I
Like
hear you, man.
it's okay sometimes, but sometimes I'm just like, fuck, man. Like I'm going crazy. I've been at home for like 16 days now.
Yeah, and they just announced. I don't know if you saw that today, but so our local, not our health minister, she's like Bonnie Henry.
Yeah,
I don't know what her title is. I forget. I apologize, Dr. Henry, but I think you're dope. Um, and she was saying that again. I don't know if you saw this or not, but she was saying today that people really should prepare themselves for this to look this way until I think she said the end of May,
yeah,
and she said maybe even most of the summer.
yeah.
So from a business standpoint, it's just like okay, there's a bunch of industries, whether it's like you own a bicycle shop or you own a pop-up barbecue business or you own a restaurant or uh, you own Bombardier, whatever it is. Like this is like taking the wind out of your sails big time. And like you said, these are events that you had kind of lined up and earmarked and money you had been expecting to come in for your business and for your business partners. So super challenging, and that's something that I find as well through conversations. And you brought up Bombardier. There's a couple other industries that are potentially going to be getting bailouts from the government, and
Yeah.
and we may end up being one of them, like hotels, restaurants, maybe an industry that gets more support.
God, I hope
But
so.
but I but I want to figure out a way, and I want to kind of like Elon Musk it if we have to, is like how do we make sure that when this happens again, because it will happen again at some point, maybe you and I won't witness it, I hope we don't, But when it happens again, how can we ensure that our industry isn't one that needs a bailout from the big brother? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Uh, I mean, that's a great question. That's $1 million question, man. It's just like the operating costs are just so high.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if you're just fucking smashing it out of the park, how much are you able to squirrel away in a fund just in case?
Right.
You know, it's just like sometimes it feels like business isn't very conducive of like looking after itself and people. It's just like grow, 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 grow. That's it.
Yep.
It's not really any emphasis on like, all right, we're going to get to a good level and we're going to maintain and we're going to protect it, like defensive business. You know what I mean? It's like it's always really aggressive. I, I mean, I'm not an economist, man, but it's just like fuck. 80% of people or whatever they're saying are like one paycheck away from going bust, and it's like look at the look at the house of cards come tumbling down now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's scary. And it's scary. We can laugh, and I think at a time like this, you kind of have to laugh a bit because otherwise we literally would go crazy.
Yeah,
But it's
totally.
so sad, and I feel for those people that are in our industry, and a lot of them are my clients um, that are tied to these giant 5 year, 10 year leases. I have one client who just kind of opened up like 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, and now they're just shut. It's like they have no idea what's going to happen if they're actually going to be able to reopen, and that to me is just like it's incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Um, but but it is our reality, and we have to figure out how we can put in place some contingencies when we come out of this. That like this just can't happen again. And I don't want to be in a city where, and I said this on my last podcast, and I don't want to throw shade at like Browns and Joey's and the larger multi property spots, but I personally don't want to live in a city where my only option is Taco Bell. Do you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And I don't think if you and I went outside right now with a megaphone, we stood 6 feet apart and we asked people like, do you want to have all the same restaurant in your city? It would be a no. But it's like, how do we get there? How do we get them to understand like if this doesn't change, that's where we're gonna end up?
Yeah, man, it's isn't it kind of scary? Doesn't it just kind of bother you how people just seem to flock to those like kind of big box, large chain restaurants, and how honest people making great food in a great setting, great drinks and everything like that, and great service are struggling? It's
Yeah.
frustrating, man. But I mean, the market really just kind of dictates what it wants, I guess. And you know, I part of me kind of feels like this situation is going to just kind of accelerate that market dictation. Like what is the restaurant landscape going to look like after this, and what's the government going to do to make sure that it never happens again? It's just like there's just so many questions floating around right now, man.
What do you think it's going to look like in our city in particular? I mean, a bunch of, or if not all of, like the great restaurants, restaurateurs in the city, and chefs in the city that have spots or had spots 3 weeks ago. Um, and we've heard numbers of like 30%, 50%, 80% of the existing restaurants won't exist after this. What do you see as the reality? Just to hypothesize a bit.
Well, I mean, I think that some people are going to weather the storm and some people aren't, and I think that depending on what the government does, that number is going to change. But afterwards, I think that people are going to start looking a lot harder at creating a little bit more equality in terms of the employment, like pay structure and stuff like that in restaurants. And I think you're going to see a little bit more dropping off of like the middle class, if you will, of restaurants. Like you're going to see the kind of dinner theater, dinner and a show, fine dining places continue. Maybe the herd will be thinned a little bit. And I think everything is just going to kind of start focusing on like the QSR
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, as you call it. I think that's what's going to happen, man, because it's just a safer investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
overhead's way lower, the margins are way higher, they're way easier to staff. And I mean, to be honest, it's more accessible. It's like more often than not, I find myself going to crush dinner at a place like Fat Mao than I do at a full sit down, full service, like kind of dinner and a show
Right.
sort of place. You know what I mean? And it's just it's easier to just pick something, short and sweet and do it well. You know what I mean?
Do you envision yourself ever having children?
That's a great question. I don't think so, but
Okay.
maybe.
So hypothetically, if you did, so I'm lucky we have two young kids, and you and I have chatted about that offline a bit. But my fear is what you just said becomes our reality, and then their reality even more so. Meaning, they won't ever know what it's like to go into Rhys's restaurant and have like the best night.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
totally.
That that's sad to me.
It
That's
is.
really sad to me.
It's absolutely sad. Um, it's never going to go away. The market's always going to be able to support something. People are never going to stop doing it. People are always going to have to eat. But I think that the market's going to kind of dictate what it wants, and I think that we're going to start seeing that change.
Hmm.
People want the Cactus Clubs and the Earls and the Joeys, and people want the QSR places, and the margins are shitty and the pay sucks, and it's just kind of like slowly caving in on itself, and
Right.
the situation is certainly kicking dirt into the hole a little bit faster.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I,
What?
but I hear you though, man. Like I don't want restaurants to go the wayside either, but I mean, it's not on a good trajectory.
Yeah. I mean, my listeners hear me say it all the time, but it's like if you and I went to name any QSR around the world, and we walk in, we order number six and number four off the menu. We get it on a tray. We sit down. We may have a conversation or not. We're probably on our phones, not even communicating, and then we leave within maybe 15 minutes. So like our exposure to that brand was 90 seconds, if that, and then we were just on our own. And I feel like that's such a sad. Like, I personally, from a business standpoint, I don't want to be involved in that because like, where's my opportunity to really impact these people and make sure they come back to me again and again? It can't just be because I have a great chicken salad and it's cheap. Like I feel like we need to ask more of ourselves and as an industry, but then again, educate the public, and that's I think the biggest thing for us coming out of this is like let people know what it costs to do this because we've been charging, in my opinion, in Canada, in North America, far too less than we should for the food that we've been producing, especially the places that are doing like legit stuff, food and drink.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. I mean, when I was at Roma, we were only buying stuff from farms. Like it was farm direct for everything, and we were working with farmers, foragers. We were bringing in a side of beef every week from Hopcot. We were bringing in whole hogs every 2 weeks, and it's just like, fuck, man. If you're not selling a lot of flour and water, like your food cost is gonna suck, man.
Yeah, yeah, it could just be a city of pizza joints too. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like I really don't want to see a society where eating properly and supporting the farmer down the road is like a bougie thing for rich people.
Right.
It's like
Right.
you go to the special place that cooks food that was grown within 100 miles. It's like, what is that? No one wants to deal with that.
Yeah.
But I mean, economically, we don't have a bone. Like, what are we supposed to do?
That's true. Uh, let's change speeds just a bit because let's talk about something a little bit more like uplifting and exciting. It seems to me, as I call you from my fun hall closet with just random things like paper towel and my daughter's bike behind me, I notice over your left shoulder a plethora of, I'm assuming, cookbooks.
Yeah,
So I'm always intrigued of people, air quotes, like you that have a plethora of cookbooks, and I understand why you would. But I would love to know, as someone who spent his time when I worked in the industry, meaning in locations, I was always front of house, so I was never back of house. And there's not that many front of house books. Like Setting the Table by Danny Meyer would kind of be the one. So, of the plethora of books behind you, let's talk about what you're reading right now, what's most influential, what has been most influential, and for the listeners, if you could say like this is the one book that you need to get if you're interested in cooking or food or the culinary world, this is the one. So what are you reading right now, and what is that one that you'd recommend to everyone?
oh, that's well, the book that I always tell my cooks to read is On Food and Cooking by Harold McGee. It's a bit of a boring read.
Right.
But,
Okay.
it's a textbook of the food science, and that's one book I used to keep it on my bedside table when I was younger. And if I was having problems sleeping or anything like that, I would just flick it open and find something interesting and start reading about it. So I've lent this out to many a cook. The Flavor Bible is also one that I recommend to a lot of people. But again, these are more like reference material, not necessarily a good read.
Right.
Um, Currently, right now, I'm about to start reading this, the Gaijin Cookbook, which is Ivan Ramen's kind of like home Japanese cookbook. In the last like 6 months, I've started to develop a lot more interest in cooking again, especially Japanese and Chinese food. And I really like his story. His book, Ivan Ramen, was really, really good. It's just a good read.
Right.
So I'm excited to jump into that. And then probably my two favorite books on here would be Sauces by James Peterson.
Okay.
Again, another kind of reference book, but quite good. Bouchon by Thomas Keller there. That's a classic. I mean, when I was at Wagon Rouge, that was like a fucking Bible to me. I love that book.
Right.
And then the last one here, Heritage by Sean Brock.
Shout out Sean Brock.
I mean, like everything that this guy does just kind of like embodies, if I could do whatever I wanted, it would be stuff like that, but in this setting here, right?
Have you met him?
No, no, I wish.
Hey, I'm sure he's listening. So shout out. What's up, Sean?
How's it going, man?
um, Something I read a while ago about him, which I thought was super intriguing, as someone who is a non-drinker. So I haven't had a drink in almost 4 years. Not because I had an issue with it, just because I did it, but I only did it out of like social obligation. I never could really appreciate wine or appreciate a cocktail. I'd rather have like sparkling water. So that was just me. Um, so I made a decision like I'm just going to stop doing it because I don't really like it. And then I read an article. I think it was in Eater, probably about a year ago now, and Sean Brock and a few other chefs had gotten together and they had facilitated this dinner. Stop me if you know the story, but they facilitated this dinner that was completely dry,
Yeah,
which you don't generally see in dinners that these guys would be executing. It's usually paired with like wine with every course or whiskeys or whatever it might be. So, um, someone like Sean Brock is, in my opinion, very influential in our industry, and as far as I understand, is living a sober life now.
he is. Yeah,
Um, so changing speeds again a little bit because I think this is still something we need to discuss because again, as we said at the start of this show, the system is broken and a
yeah,
big issue. You like you said, the guy cooking your food is making next to nothing. He's traveling to work 2 hours a day. He probably is depressed and probably has a substance abuse issue. So when you see things like Sean Brock, kind of like flying that flag of sobriety, what does that do to you or your friends or that sphere that you're in? Are you guys picking up on that? Is it important, or is it just kind of like, oh, it's a decision he made? We're just over here doing us.
I mean, I think that my good friend Jordan at Livia says alcohol breeds culture. I don't know if that's an original Jordan quote, but I picked that up off of him a while ago, and
Okay.
I absolutely believe it. But that being said, it's doing as much damage, if not more, than it is good. And I think that people that are using it for stress relief as opposed to just having a drink socially for a good time, I think that's a really slippery slope. Um, and I think that if we can start addressing some of these fundamental issues with the industry, that we're going to start seeing a lot less abuse of things like that, and we're going to see a lot more like cultural benefit of it.
Mm.
But I mean, for me and the people that I associate with, in relating in these times and things that Sean Brock is doing and stuff like that. I mean, we started KitchenAid, collectively a group of just a bunch of East Van chefs, cooks, owners, people. And we really want to see an industry for the people coming up that's better than the one that we came up in.
Mm.
Um, because yeah, I mean, sure, like a post ship beer after a big service with the crew is good, and it's a great way to build chemistry and stuff like that amongst the team is great. But I mean, a lot of people drink every night and get drunk every night, and that's how they sleep. And I mean, that's how I slept for a long time,
Hmm.
working in restaurants. It really broke me, man. I was just like, it's 10 o'clock, time to hit the fucking sauce because I'm stressed out, and that's the only way I'm going to be able to keep doing this.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it's a sad reality for a lot of people, unfortunately. And again, that there is things like what you guys do with KitchenAid and locally Mind the Bar is a great initiative as well. Like there's more conversations. I know in Toronto there's not 9 to 5 as well. So there's things that are happening, which is great. I just think more needs to be done, and I think again, it's it is people like you, people like me, people that are have voices in the industry to kind of really make people understand like, hey, like if you need to chat, let's chat. Let's not necessarily go to a bottle or to hard drugs. But one thing, I met a restaurateur in Halifax, young guy, and he now there's no post shift drinking in any of his restaurants, and even before his shift, he serves everyone on shift, front of house and back of house, green juice. So he said, I'm buying more vegetables than I've ever bought in my life, but I want to start really like leading by example and helping these people be healthy and get healthy. So instead of even like staff meal, it's green juice, which I'm sure a lot of people are like, I don't want green juice. But for me, it's like, it's things like that we need to be doing. Is like maybe start a run club or like go hiking with your like your kitchen or go hiking with everyone, whatever it is. We need to start doing more things that bring us together as a community, but also do it in a healthy way. Because again, like you said, I feel like that 10 o'clock beer could turn into like a 2 a.m. bottle of whiskey, and then it's just like a slippery
totally.
slope.
But I mean, that's great, and I'm really happy to see that the culture is starting to shift that way. But it's not going to get very far until people start addressing the issue of time. And time
Mm.
is not something that's afforded to staff right now.
Yeah, true.
Services at 5 or 5:30. You better be in there at fucking 11 because you got a huge prep list, and you got to get up, get ready, travel. You got to get back. And, it's just like these days are monster. So until we start addressing just like the workload, I
Mm.
mean, yeah, we can start paying people more money, but unless we address the workload and I think really start moving towards that like 4-day work week and stuff like that or something, anything to just kind
Mm-hmm.
of like reduce the burden a little bit. Like when do you have time?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I've always noticed a trend of when I'm working all the time, I'm terribly unhealthy. And when I have a bit of free time, I'm going to the gym and exercising and doing stuff like that and drinking less.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, they kind of come hand in hand, right? If you're working all the time, I'm sure you can make a better effort to be healthier and exercise and not get all pissed up and do drugs all the time. But I mean, it needs to be, it needs to come from both sides, right?
Mm-hmm. Personal question: how long have you been dating your girlfriend?
3 years.
Okay, is
Yeah.
she in the industry?
Yeah. She owns a pie shop with her sister.
Oh, pie shop. Shout out pie shop.
What's up, girls?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So she kind of gets it in
Yeah.
regards to like the industry,
Yeah. She was a cook forever. And, now she's a business owner and a baker.
right? What's
So,
going on with the pie shop? Give me like the down low scoop. Are they're opening up a new spot? Well.
no. So they're staying where they are. They
Okay.
did some renos.
Yeah.
They're applying for a liquor license. They're going to start doing like natural wine and stuff like that
Oh,
as
dope.
beers. And they're going to start slinging pizzas.
That's what I saw. Pizzas. Amazing.
Yeah. So they're just going to kind of shift it. They're going to start doing some services at night and just kind of change stuff up a little bit. The pie shop's still there. They're still doing pie. It's the way it is. I think they're just going to kind of shift the cafe into more of like a restaurant setting.
Hmm. That's awesome, man.
That's yeah, it's a
That's
scoop. It's great. I think it's a great idea.
inside scoop. I like it.
Yeah.
Um, you may not know this, but there's two questions that I ask every single guest, and I've done 130 some odd of these right now. So every single guest that comes on this show, before we actually like say goodbye, I have them answer these two questions for me. So if you're up for it, I'm going to pose these questions to you.
Sure, let's do it.
So the name of this podcast is the Half a Dozen Hospitality Podcast. So I have for you, Rhys, the half a dozen have tos and the half a dozen haven't yet. So stay with me here. The first one is I need from you 1 to 6, so 1 to half a dozen of your personal have tos. It can be a meal you've eaten. It can be a trip you've taken, a cookbook again. It could be an album you listened to, a piece of art you've looked at. Industry related or not, what would be one to half a dozen things that you feel like our listeners have to do?
I think that everyone needs to either forage, fish, or hunt their own meal.
Love that.
I think that everyone needs to cook their own meal over a fire.
Love that as well.
That's it's a big one for me. I mean, it's like, yeah. Um, I think that everyone needs to explore their province, check it out. For me, that meant going up to Haida Gwaii, exploring the island, getting around in the interior, just checking it out, getting the lay of the land.
Mhm.
Uh, what else? Every, I think that everyone should box or do some sort of martial art at least once in their life. I want to say like everyone should get in a fight, but I don't think that everyone should do some sort of sanctioned, supervised, proper martial art. I think you really get to know yourself, when you hop in the ring with somebody for a spar. I think that really kind of pushes you to your limit and helps you learn a lot about yourself.
I like that.
What's that? Four, three?
That's four. That's four. Those are four really good ones. You want to keep going?
Doing pretty good. Yeah, yeah. I think that everyone should learn how to cook. Just a basic level of aptitude in cooking.
What would be say one like give people an idea of a dish, whether it's like a veggie curry or a chicken curry that like you got to know how to like build flavors, cook your rice, not overcook your protein. Like what would be the one dish that you feel like if this is in your arsenal, you'll be good?
I think that everybody should know how to cook a fillet of fish. I think that everybody should know how to make a pot of soup. I think that everybody should know how to braise a proper stew, like a bourguignon or like a beef stew or whatever. I think there's a lot of technique involved in just like building flavor, assembling, making sure things are cooked properly and stuff like that. And I think that everybody should be able to cook a proper fucking omelet.
Hmm. No brown in the omelet.
No brown, no brown.
Yeah.
Um, Six.
You're a beast, dude. Most people tap out after two, so
Oh, you know what? This is easy. Everybody should listen to the fucking half a dozen hospitality
oh,
podcasts.
I'll send you that $500 after the show. Amazing, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
The last one I have for you is the half a dozen haven't yets. So kind of like a bucket list, if you will. So one to six things that you've yet to experience in your life that you want to experience, or you at least, yeah, you've got it in the back of your mind, like I want to tick that box.
I want to go hunting. Uh,
Four.
like moose or deer.
Okay.
Something that I definitely want to get into. You know, there's a lot of traveling that I need to do. I think high on the bucket list for that is Japan, France. Yeah, I think Japan and France. So let's say I want to go to Japan and I want to go to France. Those are
Okay.
two very high things on the bucket list.
Where are you? Where are you? What's your first stop in Japan, or like the one spot you're really going to you want to check out? And then in France as well, like, do you have either a chef or a certain location that you're like, I got to go there and try X?
In France, it's definitely Lyon. I think
Yeah.
that's just kind of like the epicenter of
Hmm.
cuisine. In Europe, kind of. I'm sure a lot of people argue that, but it definitely is a big important place for me. And in Japan, you know, I think Okinawa would be a pretty interesting place to go check out. I don't know if it's the number one spot for food or anything like that, but I think
Hmm.
that there's a lot of really crazy history there. And I think that, the kind of presence of Americans since the 50s or whatever has probably bred some pretty interesting culture down there. That's a
If
place
I
to check
if
out.
I sorry to interrupt, if I get a free pass from my wife, I've got a buddy from San Francisco who's going over to Japan for a culinary school. So he's supposed to be there now, but everything that happened canceled it. But if and when I do go, you should come with.
That would be awesome, man. I would love to do that.
Yeah,
That would be
dope,
amazing.
dope. Because I think it'd be great to. And, oh, sorry, and he's Japanese. So
Oh, even better. So you've got a liaison.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Sorry, so I interrupted your flow. So we're going to France. We're going to Japan. What was your
You're going
first one?
hunting.
Hunting. Yeah, sorry, hunting for moose or some large game.
Uh, Four. I have not traveled across Canada yet. I've been
Oh
about as far east as Edmonton. Actually, I've never. I mean, I've had layovers in Toronto and stuff like that, but I want to see the whole country for sure.
man, I'm from Nova Scotia, so I will again. So we'll hit Nova Scotia and then hop to Japan.
Fuck, perfect, man. This is awesome. World tour, man.
I love it.
Um, have not. I've never done a stage at a Michelin star restaurant. I don't
Hmm.
really know if cooking kind of on a brigade is really my cup of tea anymore, but it's definitely something that I would like to do at some point. So we'll see. It's definitely on the list. And
Doesn't Japan have the most number of Michelin star rated restaurants in the
yeah, I
world?
think Tokyo has like the highest concentration or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could stage when we're there.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, we're just banging these off. What's that? Five?
Yeah.
The last one. Have not. I would love to do a road trip across the states as well. There you go. Last one. These are almost all travel.
No, man, I love it. Travel is huge for a lot of people. It comes up a lot in this show. People want to travel more, and I appreciate that because as someone who, so I left home, I left school, lived overseas for 2 years, called London home, and traveled around. Then I moved here. There's just you got to get out of where you're from. Like just if it's for like a weekend or a year, whatever it is, like go and see something different. There's so much to be learned, and there's so like even just food, like go somewhere where they do something different with their chicken or they do
Yeah.
something different with their pasta or their whatever it is. Like just
Yeah.
explore. There's so much out there, and especially when you use food as that conductor and also that connector to that local spot. It's just yeah, it just has to be done. So
It's funny when all this shit started going down. There were a lot of concerns and crazy thoughts running through my head. And, the biggest regret that I had wasn't like, fuck, why didn't I pack an emergency kit in my closet or why don't I have more cans of beans or anything like that? It was like, fuck, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket right now, like I'm not going to have traveled all the places that I wanted. That was like the immediate, I was like, fuck,
yeah. So here's my
definitely top
question.
of the priority list now.
Yeah, so here's my question then. When are you going to do all this stuff? Because for me, I'm very much like a memento mori kind of guy, meaning like this is all going to end at some point.
Yeah.
I don't look at that as being a morbid thing. I think it's kind of a beautiful thing. So I really am selective with people I spend my time with, or thoughts that I have, or words that I speak, because this could all go like that,
Yeah.
and that is just a beautiful, true fact of life. So when you and I sit here and we talk about like I want to do this and I need to do this, so when this podcast ends and when this pandemic is over, will will your actions be more in line with, hey, how do I get my ass to Tokyo, or how do I spend 2 weeks in Leon?
Yeah. 100%, man. I think
Yeah.
it's been a huge eye opener. It's been an eye opener, in a lot of different ways. But I think that the number one priority is like, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow,
Hmm.
what am I going to regret the most? And
Hmm.
it's not going to be making sure that I have, that big savings account yet. It's time to go see some stuff. It's time to, acquire some experiences.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that, man. Before I do let you go officially, again, I don't want to put you on the spot, but we're blessed with a lot of people listen to this show, a lot of people in the industry, and a lot of people outside of it, the general public. So, speaking to a reality right now as we know it, if you could share any words of wisdom or inspiration or insight to our industry or to people outside of it, the mic is yours if you want to take the space.
Oh, well, thank you. This too shall pass. We're going to get through this. And now is a great time to look after each other, you know, to be cognizant of the challenges that different people may have, and to do everything that you can to kind of pull everyone together through this. It's like, imagine you're back in kindergarten again. Like, let's talk about sharing, let's talk about compassion, let's talk about empathy, let's talk about all these things.
Mhm.
And we're going to get through this. And when we get through this, we're going to be better prepared for the next time something like this happens. It's
100%.
a really unfortunate circumstance, but we need to focus on, the silver lining of it, what little there is. And, we're going to pull through this. This isn't the end of the world.
Yeah. No, well said. I appreciate that. And dude, you're 28?
Yeah.
Man, it's amazing how this industry makes people grow up really, really quickly. Because I feel like just where you're at mentally is. I'm 37, and I know a few of my friends that don't even like think on that level. So, kudos to you for.
Thanks a lot, Brad.
Yeah, no, kudos to you for being seemingly so mature. I'm sure you have your moments of immaturity,
We all do, my friend. We all
which
do.
we oh trust me, yeah, me as well. But I do want to take a moment to say thank you so much for the words you just shared and the words you have shared throughout this podcast. I've said it for a while, then I stopped saying it, and I'm going to start saying it again. I'm a big believer that the most valuable thing that we all have is time, and you've given me yours for the last 55 minutes and 31, 32, 33 seconds, and the listeners as well. So from the bottom of my heart, and listeners, thank you so much for doing what you do, one, and two, coming on the show tonight to discuss some fun stuff, some not so fun stuff, and our current reality. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for listening, and thank you for what you do, man. You have a great show, and I love listening to it, and I'm sure a lot of people do as well. So
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Now we add you to the roster, and I sincerely add you to the roster of my friend as well. So if I can do anything for you from here on out, whether it's a hookup in Nova Scotia or my buddy's number when he gets to Japan, you let me know.
thanks a
Um,
lot, Brad.
that is it, guys. That is Rhys. I am Brad. This is the Half a Dozen Hospitality podcast. I appreciate you guys more than you know. If it wasn't for you, this show wouldn't exist. You know what to do until next time. Be good and do good. We're out.
See you later, buddy.
Dude, you crushed it.
Thanks a lot, man.
How was that for you?
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah? Dude,
I
you're
mean,
really.
I've been cooped up at home for 16 days.